Today I'm looking at the best transfer rumours for all 20 Premier League clubs. We're going to go through some of the biggest names and decide if they're hits or misses at this stage. We're going to go alphabetical order and we'll start with Arsenal. A couple of rumours to address. We're going to leave alone Mosquera and Rodrigo and focus on Eze and Madueke. Let's start with Eberechi Eze, still only 27 years old, £68 million release clause, which is quite expensive given that on the surface of things, Arsenal don't have a vacancy in that number 10 position with Martin Odegaard there. But I'll be honest, I think Eze is a fantastic fit for this Arsenal system. Yes, he might not replace Martin Odegaard, but at times he could play alongside Martin Odegaard, two number 10s. We saw last season Odegaard pick up significant injuries and then have no cover. There was chat about, we shouldn't have sold Fabio Vieira or Emile Smith-Rowe. Well, Eze not only pushes Odegaard in that number 10 role, he can also start alongside it. I think some of the chat about him playing left wing is maybe a little bit misguided. I don't necessarily see that as one of his most natural roles. That left-sided 10 position does suit him though. He's gone 14, 15, 16 goal involvements across the last 3 seasons. He's also scored huge goals. He scored quarter-finals, semi-finals, final of the FA Cup to win Crystal Palace their first ever trophy. And I think that goal output is something Arsenal could really do with from midfield, given that Odegaard and Rice last season contributed 4 goals and 3 goals each. So for me, this is an absolutely obvious hit. Eze, even at £68 million, I think elevates Arsenal's floor and their ceiling in that midfield role. How about Noni Madueke though? He's been linked to Arsenal to the tune of about £50-55 million. He's still only 23 years old, and there have been heavy links over the last couple of days with Gabi Martinelli and Saudi Arabia. Reports of £73 million bids coming in. But Madueke doesn't traditionally play on the left. Yes, he played a few minutes at the end of last season for Chelsea there, but predominantly throughout his career, he's been a right winger. And he definitely has huge positives in his game, top 10%, 4 progressive carries, 4 take-ons. He's really difficult to stop in 1v1 situations, but he also gets a lot of shots off. He's in the top 5% of European wingers for his shot volume. He drives into the box and takes a lot of touches inside the box. So would Arsenal be planning on playing on the left and then utilising him as cover for Saka if needs be? What would that mean for the future of Nwaneri, who still hasn't signed a contract? I think if you ask most fans, they'd be a bit sceptical about the Madueke deal. I think he'd be pretty sceptical. He's under contract till 2030, and I think in the right wing slot where he wants to play, where he has played, the path to first team football consistently is clearer at Chelsea than it is at Arsenal. You're not going to start over Bukayo Saka, the face of the project, the best player in the team. For me, right now, as we sit here, I would probably sneak this into miss. Arsenal fans, what do you think about the Madueke deal? Where is he going to play? Because I think that's where my reservations come, not in the quality of the player. Aston Villa continue to be linked with Ferran Torres. Of course, Asensio and Marcus Rashford were not made permanent, so there is a little bit of a vacancy for a versatile forward who can contribute alongside a player like Ollie Watkins if he's still at the club. And Ferran had a really impactful season, particularly off the bench for Barcelona, and in times when Robert Lewandowski wasn't available. He was averaging a goal involvement every 62 minutes in La Liga last campaign, helped out by the fact that Hansi Flick had Barcelona playing an incredibly attacking brand of football. They were just pumping goals in. But when you look at his career minutes at Barcelona, they've never really been the highest. I don't think he's quite had the impact Barca were expecting him to have when they signed him for that much money from Manchester City. But even at Man City, 9 goal involvements was his best Premier League total. I think if ever there's a time to leave and say, I want to be the guy at a club, maybe it's now. But there is an argument to be made. There is consistent minutes to be had at Barcelona. Robert Lewandowski's getting no younger. The Nico Williams deal has fallen apart. So is there going to be game time next season for Ferran? And why would they sell him for cheap? There's reports of €40 million fees. I don't understand that. In the market where we're seeing players like Jamie Gittins go for 55 mil, Elanga we're going to see go for 55 mil, Burmo maybe for 70 million. I think Ferran Torres is worth significantly more than €40 million. From Aston Villa's perspective, though, given Asensio was able to put up 4 goal involvements in the second half of the season, Marcus Rashford was able to contribute, I do think there is an option to sign another forward. Never really replaced John Duran following that sell to Saudi. He's now gone to Fenerbahce, of course. I actually think if they could get him for the right price, Ferran Torres' versatility could be very useful. Bournemouth are interested in Bafodé Diakite. I suggested this on the lowdown midweek as well. I really like the fit because he's able to play at fullback and at centre-back. He's extremely athletic. Predominantly, he's operated on the right side of the back four, though, which is quite interesting because Does that confirm Zabani is going to go to PSG? And he is also quite different to Dean Howson. You know, he's not as aesthetically pleasing on the ball as Dean Howson, who's very smooth, able to step into midfield. A real interception machine, though. Wants to jump out the line, and that is something you also see in Diakite's game. I think partly that's down to the fact he was once a fullback. Bournemouth really have a habit recently of unearthing gems for very good value. He's played a lot of minutes for Lille. He's got Champions League experience. The fee seems low. I'm going to say this is another hit. Let's talk about Omari Hutchinson potentially going to Brentford. This is a rumour that's been bubbling away under the surface. Could he be the Bryan Mbeumo replacement? And Mbeumo, of course, came out the Championship with Brentford, performed excellently in the Premier League, 20 goals last season. And Omari Hutchinson really had a breakout campaign of Premier League football last season. He started 30 games, predominantly on that right-hand side. But I think at times he struggled a little bit with the physicality. We saw him at the Euros with the under-21s. Really impressive. Playing on the left-hand side, though, under Lee Carsley. And I think when you think about the best of Omari Hutchinson, at times even last season at Ipswich, it came quite centrally, didn't he? You know, 5 goal involvements, an okay start. I think for Brentford, though, when they look to replace Bryan Mbeumo, they could almost be a little bit punchier. I might just put this in miss, but he could definitely come in and make an impact. His ceiling is extremely high. I just think it's a lot of pressure to put on his shoulders to replace a player like Mbeumo. Let's talk about Brighton, potentially interested in signing Wesley França, the Flamengo right back. You might well have seen him at the Club World Cup. There's also heavy interest from Everton and Roma. By the time you watch this, this may well have developed into a slightly different situation, but clearly Brighton are in the hunt for a right back. Veltman and Lamptey have both got 1 year left on their contract. Veltman's 33 years old. We saw Jack Hinshelwood used a lot at right back. I still think he's better in the midfield. And França has a lot to like about his game. He's really physically developed for a player who's still only 23 years old. Excellent in attacking areas. I think what we saw at the Club World Cup is going backwards. A little bit to be desired, but there's a reason Manchester City and Chelsea have both been interested in him recently. Brighton have done some amazing shopping in recent seasons in the South American leagues. It's hard to call a Brighton transfer a miss, isn't it? I mean, do we risk it? I would very, very rarely go against Tony Bloom's decision-making. Burnley need some pace and some power in midfield, and that's why they're being linked to Andy Diouf. Now, if they were able to pull this deal off, this would be a huge coup. Plenty of clubs in Europe have been watching Diouf. You look at Crystal Palace wanting to sign him recently. The reported fee is about 18 million euros. He's a French under-21 international. I'm sure you guys at home will have seen his ball-carrying ability from highlight packages on social media. He's amazing at cracking through the lines, knocking people off the ball. Good two-way number 8, but predominantly wants to play further up the field. Burnley need midfielders. You know, Brownhill has left the club on a free transfer. He started an awful lot of games last season. And to replace those 39 starts with a player who in Europe is in the top 5% of ball-carrying midfielders, top 15% for successful dribble rate. If they can get this done, it's a huge hit, a huge coup. I still think clubs will be interested in pushing them right to the line, though. Chelsea have been offered the chance to sign Emi Martinez. I think for me, this would probably be a bit of a miss. I certainly think he's an upgrade on what Chelsea have got in goal right now. We're going to talk about Georgi Petrovic later and his links to Sunderland. But Chelsea fans, before I get into this, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on signing a player like Emi Martinez. It would be very out of the wheelhouse of the transfer business Bluco have done so far, despite the fact they wanted Manuel. Whilst I'm saying that, I don't think there's anything wrong with signing a 32-year-old goalkeeper. You know, teams in the past have signed plus 30-year-olds in goal, and they've gone on to have exceptional careers at that club. And I still think Martinez is operating at an extremely high level. The most key issue in this move for me is his ability with his feet. You look at what Enzo Maresca wants from his goalkeepers, be it at Leicester when he had Hermanson there, or the reason he wants to play Robert Sanchez. He believes they are really vital in build-up. Not really Emi Martinez's game, that. He wants him to play quite advanced outside the box. Not really Emi Martinez's game. I think Emi Martinez is best as a shot stopper and a really dominating goalkeeper that can come and claim anything in his box. A huge leader. I think there are a few issues with this deal. Let's talk about Ousmane Diomande, who's moved to Crystal Palace. Feels like it's slowly edging forward, right? 55 million euro fees are being talked about here. Obviously, this clearly indicates that Mark Guehi is going to leave the club, in my opinion. But whatever happens, if they get Ousmane Diomande, another huge Kudus, one of Europe's best young centre-backs, still only 21 years old. He plays the game at times like a defensive midfielder. He's so good on the ball, but has the natural physicality. I think could come in and make an impact in the Premier League quite quickly. I don't see it being a huge transitional difference. The one issue I've got, and I've said on previous videos, is at Sporting, he has played as a central centre-back. At Crystal Palace, is he going to disrupt Maxence Lacroix in that position? Lacroix last season was unbelievable. One of the best signings of the season, one of the best centre-backs in the league, won the FA Cup for Palace. Does a 21-year-old Diomande come into Lacroix's spot and mean he moves into the right centre-back role, or does Diomande have to adapt his game and play slightly wider in the channels? Very interested to see what Ollie Glasner does with him, but whatever happens, you cannot deny it's a mind-blowing transfer. Talking of mind-blowing transfers, is Thierno Barry to Everton not right up there? How on earth have Everton had an matched run at Thierno Barry, who is a real physical specimen at 6'4", excellent in the channels, aerial dominance, still young, was he 21, 22 years old, 11 goals this campaign for Villarreal, huge shot numbers, could work on his shot locations a little bit, and he can snatch at chances sometimes, but given that Everton have lost Dominic Calvert-Lewin for €35 million, Thierno Barry's name was being linked with Champions League clubs. I think this is a great option for Everton. Him and Beto competing for the number 9 spot. I think Thierno Barry will lock that down pretty quickly. Really good level talent for Everton to acquire, and for me, this is a very clear hit. Let's go to Fulham, who are reportedly trying to bring in, well, they are trying to bring in Romulo. They've had a €16 million bid knocked back, according to David Ornstein. He's the striker at Göztepe over in Turkey. Really sensational campaign. He's been chased by the likes of Leipzig, Feyenoord. Feyenoord have now pulled out of the deal, which might leave Fulham with a one-on-one head-to-head clash with Leipzig for his signature. But he had a sensational campaign last year in the Turkish Super League. I think 17 goals, 10 assists. He leads the line. He's quite physical in the air, good at bringing other players into the game. And you look at what Fulham did last season. Raul Jimenez top scored 12 goals, but he's 33 years old now. Rodrigo Muniz, 23. There's interest in him from other clubs, so I think they're looking to protect their interest in that striking role. Marco Silva wants to add more goals to the team. Only one player got into double figures of Premier League goals last season, and that was Jimenez. So this is an interesting deal. But look, I'm not going to pretend I've watched tons of Göztepe matches. I've gone and watched the highlight packages of him, as you'd expect. I've read a lot of scout reports. I'm going to say on the surface of it, the fee seems fine, and this will be a hit. How about Leeds' pursuit of Douglas Luiz? I mean, from a player's perspective, I'm going to be harsh here. I don't quite get why he would make that step down. I think Leeds are a huge club, certainly need more bodies in the midfield. You think of the amount of games Joe Rothwell, for instance, played last season. It was upwards of 30 appearances, wasn't it? And his ball carrying, passing ability was pretty key to how Leeds operated. To replace him with Douglas Luiz, I mean, that's an amazing swap. Because when you think of Douglas Luiz at Aston Villa, this was a player who, particularly long passing range, top 10% of European midfielders for his long passing range, great at getting the ball through the lines, excellent dead ball delivery. But I think this is the one I'm going to look at from the player's perspective. A lot of these I've spoken about from the club's perspective. I mean, Douglas Luiz, from a player's perspective, I think that's a little bit of a miss. From a club's perspective, it's obviously a hit, but I just don't get that. From a player and a club's perspective, I think Mark Guehi to Liverpool would be a huge hit. Let's talk about the defensive issues they're potentially facing, with Ibu Konate running his contract into the final year and Virgil van Dijk getting no younger. They've already sold Jarrell Quansah for £30 million, an amazing fee. To add Mark Guehi to that roster would be unbelievable business. The guy has very few flaws to his game. He's good in the air, excellent on the ball, adaptable in a 3 or a 4, can play as a left-sided centre-back, but he's also naturally right-footed, homegrown. I mean, for a £50 million fee, for me, this is one of the signings of the summer. Let's talk about Diogo Costa and Manchester City. Now, I think Ederson's performances at the Club World Cup and last season as well, at times, have left a few Man City fans a bit sceptical. I'm actually really interested to hear from you Man City fans. Ederson, is it time to move on? Or do you stick with him for another season? Because he is 31 now. What's interesting about this is that traditionally under Pep at Man City, there's been a lot of turnover throughout that squad, but Ederson has remained very consistent. I thought at one stage Ortega might take the reins there, but he never did. Could Diogo Costa be the guy? Because he's still just 25 years old. Seems that the price tag is semi-reasonable, about that £50 million mark, and he's been long touted as one of Europe's next great goalkeepers. What I think is quite interesting about the fit of Diogo Costa in City is his average defensive action distance from goal. Ederson is obviously super high, he plays quite advanced, his ball playing is amazing. Well, Diogo Costa is in the top 1% of average distance from goal for his defensive actions. He's right up the pitch. He compresses teams. He wants to be on the ball. He's very comfortable in possession for Porto. I mean, as far as Ederson replacements go, I'm not sure there's many better options on the market than Diogo Costa. His ceiling still feels like it hasn't been reached, and the fee, I mean, for Man City is fine. We're into Manchester United now. We will talk about Brighton and Bournemouth, but let's focus on Ollie Watkins. As a player I previously suggested earlier in the summer that United should look at. I think he is absolutely ideal for the number 9 role. A little bit akin to Victor Gyökeres in his playing style, and he wants to run the channels, but he can hold the ball up. He's a real handful for centre-backs and wants to stretch the game with his movement. But also, he's Premier League proven. He's never once scored less than double figures of goals in a domestic league season since 2016. So we're 9 years in. Every single season, he's bagged double figures, be that in League One, in the Championship, now in the Premier League. Last season, it was 16 goals, 8 assists, no penalties. The season before was 19 goals. I don't think there was any penalties in that either. Look, he does miss a few high-profile chances, but this would be a huge upgrade for Manchester United in the number 9 role. His age at 29 is a little bit of a problem, but I think it's a good problem to have. Man United have not signed a PK striker for a decade, really. You look at some of the options United have gone for in there, they're either 35 or above or 22 and below. How about United go out and just take a player who they think right now can contribute and impact? And for me, that is Ollie Watkins. I really like the move for the right fee. I also obviously like the Brighton and Bournemouth deal. Yes, it is getting expensive. I think it's almost at the stage now where it's like eye-wateringly expensive. But 20 goals last season. I'm pretty confident he would have got close to 20 goals the season before if he didn't have that significant ankle injury. And all round, his game just suits this system, playing in that right-sided 10, able to drop deep and be creative, stretch the game with his runs, left-footed so he can invert. I love the idea of him and Ahmad playing and swapping roles on that right-hand side. Just a demon. And United, the idea of going Cunha and Bournemouth and potentially Watkins is a very different tact, and I think it's a tact of signing Premier League players that are proven United should have gone for a long time ago. He's only 25 too. Bournemouth, so plenty of football ahead of him. Could Newcastle be helping Manchester United a bit with the funding of Anthony Elanga? Of course, £55 million bids going in from Newcastle for Elanga. United have a 20% sell-on fee, so that would be upwards of £10 million going to Manchester United for a player that really does, stylistically and in terms of profile, mirror Jacob Murphy quite closely. Very transitional and athletic, but mainly creative. Not huge goal scoring output. I know that Jacob Murphy scored quite a few last campaign, but it's the assist side of Elanga's game that I'm sure will excite Eddie Howe. I really like the idea of Anthony Elanga and Newcastle's style of play, that athleticism, that pressing, that physicality. I only think that's going to get better from Elanga. He's still just 23 years old. There are some flaws in his game. You know, not a big shot volume guy, not big expected goals. I don't expect him to contribute huge numbers of goals, given across the last 2 seasons of Premier League football, he's put up a combined 11, playing very consistently for a really good Forest side this season especially. And when you think of those expected goals numbers, you're looking at sort of bottom 20% of European forwards. But let's forget that, because I think he can improve on it, and I think he'll get even better playing under Eddie Howe. I think there's a lot of improvement to be made in this game. It's a slight overpay. Maybe that will be argued. But in a market where Gittins has gone for 55 million, Pedro has gone for 55 million, Bournemouth's potentially going to go for 70 million, I think Forest are well within their right to demand 55 million. They don't need to sell. They're going to be playing European football next season. And Newcastle need him. They've been rejected by literally every other forward. So they've got to get this Elanga deal done. Could the replacement for him be Malik Fofana? I can barely even believe I'm saying that, but Lyon's financial situation has apparently opened the door here. I mean, this would be quite unbelievable, wouldn't it? A bit like Douglas Luiz. I'm sure some people at home will be saying, well, if you've got Douglas Luiz in there, why would Malik Fofana go to Forest? I think there's a bit of a difference there. Forest very much were pushing for Champions League football until the final couple of weeks of the season. Malik Fofana is still very young. You know, Douglas Luiz, 27. Same reason I haven't got Tierno Barry down there and miss. We know what Douglas Luiz is going to do, and Malik Fofana, his explosiveness just makes him so exciting. I mean, a player putting up nearly 7 progressive carries per 90, it is different to what Anthony Elanga offers. He's more of a goal-scoring threat, more of a natural dribbler on the ball, aesthetically, the way he moves with it. I mean, yeah, I'm going to say this is a hit. I think this would be a ridiculous signing if Forest can pull it off. Sunderland in talks to sign Georgi Petrovic. There's a few other clubs in the mix for Petrovic, so if Sunderland can get this deal done, it'll be a huge coup. It'll take their spending to nearly £100 million. They've really been splashing the cash, and fair play to them, because that's what you've got to do when you jump up to the Premier League. Now, Petrovic had a ridiculous campaign last season in France. Let's not forget this is one of, I think, the 2 or 3 best goalkeepers in Liga, and that was pretty clear, operating at about a 90% save percentage. His post-shot expected goals were ridiculous, and there was a wide expectation he'd come back and start for Chelsea over Robert Sanchez, who's had a poor campaign. But the reality is he didn't go to the Club World Cup, and clearly, whether it's Enzo Maresca or the club, they feel now is the time to cash in on him. I'm a little bit shocked. I thought he would get another chance at Chelsea, especially with the form of the goalkeepers they've got on their books. But no, looks like they're going to cash in, and Sunderland could be huge beneficiaries here. This would be an amazing steal for them. Let's talk about Mo Kudus to Tottenham. An £80 million release clause, but Tottenham are very confident they can get this deal done for a lot cheaper than that. Son is going to be staying at the club, which is an interesting little quirk to this deal, because where's Mo Kudus going to play? Is it going to be in that 10 role competing with James Maddison? I love the idea of having depth in there. Spoke about that with Arsenal, especially with James Maddison, who missed 1,300 minutes of Premier League football last season, being really injury prone. Kulusevski can also play in there, but what Kudus does have is an X factor. He has something to his game. When you watch him, you're like, yeah, there is definitely a really special talent in there. It's just how you get the best out of him. Because I don't think he had a good season last campaign at all. I think he was very frustrated at times, and that showed in some of his disciplinaries. Don't think he particularly got the best out of him in that Graham Potter system. So there are a few question marks about him. And question marks I still believe he could put to bed with his natural ability. He is a sensational footballer on his day. But that phrase, on his day, is very rarely linked to players that are consistent and excellent over the course of a campaign. The season before, that was Kudus flying. 14 goal involvements in the Premier League in just 27 starts proved he can do it here. His final season at Ajax proved he could do it on a European level. I do think this would be a big hit for Tottenham. I think to take a player off West Ham as well, it's kind of exciting. And there's only really upside given he's 24. I can't imagine, mate. It's just something in my head says that he is going to be a top level player. I just can't imagine him having another down season. Spurs fans, what do you think about this Kudus deal? It seems to have split the fan base. Malik Diouf is being linked to West Ham. 25 million euro fees are being talked about. I've only seen him once, and that was when he was playing against England. Very strong, very physical on that left-hand side, and clearly West Ham need a left-back. You know, Cresswell has left the club. Emerson, pretty limited minutes under Graham Potter. We saw Aaron Wan-Bissaka playing at left wing back at times. So could he come in and be the guy in the left back, left wing slot under Graham Potter, whatever system he decides to deploy? Potentially. He's definitely got the physicality for it, and I was really impressed by his crossing ability against England. I think he won the newcomer of the year. Haven't seen enough of him really, but just because West Ham are so desperate for a left back, and I was impressed against England, I'm putting him in. A player I've seen more of is Evan Gesson. Of course, had an amazing season at Nice. Lots of suitors that are a higher level than Wolves. If Wolves can pull this deal off, I'd be really impressed. He's very, very versatile. 20 goal involvements in Ligue 1, including 12 goals. A fee reportedly over £20 million could be enough to coax him out of Nice. I struggle to see any downside in this deal, and what you start to see there is a picture being painted that some of the strong rumours Premier League clubs are involved in are pretty bloody good. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Maybe I'll do another one of these in a couple of weeks. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.